Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of the Inside Picks podcast. My name is Mike Owens, where each week I give you my thoughts on one of the biggest fights in MMA or boxing this weekend. We've talked a lot about the UFC middleweight division over the last few weeks with Nasruddin Imavov versus Israel Adesanya, Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland, and last weekend Jared Cannonier versus Gregory Rodriguez. But we turn our attention to the bantamweight division and to the 135-pound division at UFC Seattle, where Henry Cejudo faced Song Yadong in a bantamweight matchup. The Seattle card has taken quite a few hits. Dominic Cruz is forced out of his retirement fight against Rob Font. Edson Barboza is out of his fight against Steve Garcia. Curtis Blades' fight has been moved to UFC 313, and Macy Chiasson is also out of her fight. There's a couple of others, but they seem to be the key fight. So this card has certainly taken a lot of hits, but the main event is an absolutely stellar one. When you actually look at 2025 so far, I would say that this fight, outside of the Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov title fight, it's probably the biggest bantamweight fight currently booked to take place. It's a massive fight between the number 7 and number 8 in the division. I mean, when you look at Henry Cejudo, one of the most accomplished fighters in the smaller weight classes, Olympic champion, flyweight champion, bantamweight champion, as Henry will tell you more often than not. The run that he went on around about 2018 through to 2020 was nothing short of incredible. To win the flyweight title against Demetrius Johnson, to defend that title against bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw, then to go up and fight Marlon Moraes and defeat him for the bantamweight title before defending the title against Dominic Cruz at UFC 249 was one of the best 4-fight stretches we've ever seen in the sport. I genuinely do believe that. Henry makes a decision to sit out for 3 years and returns against Aljamain Sterling in a very close but competitive fight, where I do think, as much as Henry was competitive, he did show signs of the 3-year layoff and certainly of his age. His most recent fight against Merab Dvalishvili was close and competitive in the first round until Merab's pace, pressure and cardio kind of took over across the second round. And there's obviously that famous moment where Merab picks Henry up with the high crotch, walks him over to Mark Zuckerberg before dumping him on his backside. Very dominant fight for Merab as that fight kind of went on, and not the most encouraging signs for Henry, given not only how his return fight against Aljamain went, but also given he's now 37 years of age. Conversely, Song Yadong is almost one of these super prospects. I mean, he comes into the UFC at 21 years of age. He's had wins over Marlon Moraes, Chito Vera and Chris Gutierrez in his most recent win, and that was also a 5-round contest. And what's so interesting about Song is seeing him over the last 5 or 6 years in the UFC. He has stumbled. He stumbled against Kyler Phillips, and he rebounded with a great couple of wins. He stumbled against Corey Sandhagen, and he rebounded with a great couple of wins. And he's shown a lot of improvement in those losses, and he's been able to take major positives from those defeats and apply them to his own game and to really improve from them. He's obviously coming off a loss in his last time out against Peter Yan at UFC 299, so it's going to be really interesting to see how he evolves from that loss and how he moves forward, and the key takeaways that he has from that last fight. When we look at this fight from a stylistic X's and O's standpoint, I think it's pretty fair to assume that Henry Cejudo at least needs the threat, or certainly some success in the takedown area, in order to win this fight and get over the line against Song Yadong. Henry obviously operates with that wide karate style, and I do feel like this fight will play out on the feet in some stages, but he is going to need to mix in his wrestling and his grappling in order to slow Song down and win portions of this fight. Another point to mention about Henry is he's got to make this fight dirty. I mean, I remember when he fought Marlon Moraes for the UFC bantamweight title, and his ability to lock Moraes up with the tie clinch and to land those tiny knees was really, really effective in draining Moraes' gas tank. So that's one point to mention, is if he can make this fight dirty, use the clinch, use elbows, use knees, put Song up against the fence and really try and work on his gas tank. Having said that, Song, I think, definitely has the power and also the speed advantage in this one. I think if this fight stays on the feet for too long, I do feel like that Henry could run into some issues, and we've obviously seen the one-punch KO ability that Song Yadong has. Think of the likes of his Marlon Moraes knockout, his Alejandro Gutierrez knockout all those years ago, where he's very much able to put people out with one shot. If you're building a case for why Henry should have success in this fight, or can have success in this fight, you would point to their relative experience. Now, One thing that's interesting when you look at this fight, and it again plays into Song Yadong's youth, this will be both Song's and Cejudo's 15th fight in the UFC. Now, I'm not saying their experience is equal, because some of the names that Henry has on his resume in wins and defeats is a lot stronger, let's say, than Song Yadong's relative competition. But I do still feel like it's slept upon how much experience Song has at such a young age, and I do feel like Song will be able to pass this test and will be able to start becoming a major player in the bantamweight division. I do feel like with a couple of minor adjustments he can be a threat to the title. Again, his relative age is a big part of this, but I do feel like he's going to be able to get over the line against Henry Cejudo. I'm not sure if there'll be a stoppage. It might be a wide point decision or maybe a late stoppage victory, but I do feel like Song Yadong is going to be able to get over the line against Henry Cejudo. The third question to kind of consider here is who winning creates more interesting matchups in the bantamweight division, or who being victorious in this fight opens up the division wider. I mean, the division is pretty wide open at the moment. 7 of the top 10 are coming off a loss, so the division is pretty wide open and there's a lot of different ways that this can go. If Henry wins, it does feel like it would open up the super fight categories. Think of a Marlon Chito Vera fight, a Sean O'Malley fight. I mean, they've had a back and forth for a number of years now. I do think that fight could potentially be on the horizon, maybe not next, but certainly in the future. For Song, I do feel like this would be an ascension of him into a real title challenging opportunity. Again, not necessarily next, but I do feel like if Song Yadong can get over the line against Henry Cejudo, that says a lot about his future. And again, just to reiterate the point, him being so young in the division gives him so much time against some of these competitors, not only to learn off defeats as we previously mentioned, but also just again to keep continuing this charge towards the title. Henry is, say what you want about Henry, but he is a serial winner. And to lose 2 in the way that he has over his last fights will certainly have hurt him. He's had a career where he's virtually won at all stages. Again, I don't want to call retirement out too early, but I do feel like a loss here against Song Yadong would certainly be a step down in competition. Losing to the current champion and the current champion and the former champion in Sterling and Merab is nothing to hang your head on, but losing to an up-and-coming contender is a lot different on Henry's resume. So again, don't want to count our chickens before they've hatched, but I do feel like this would be a loss for Henry here would be a big dent in terms of not only his title opportunities, but also how much longer we see him in competition. That's it from me, but before we finish, please remember to subscribe to the Inside Fighting YouTube channel, and please remember to like and comment on this video with who you think is going to get the job done at UFC Seattle. Is it going to be Henry Cejudo, or is it going to be Song Yadong? Give us your thoughts.